Hello, everybody. Welcome to the UMKR and MFSA webinar. My name is Bridget Cabrera. I use she, her, hers pronouns. I'm the Executive Director of Methodist Federation for Social Action. And we're really excited to be co-hosting these series of webinars with United Methodists for Kairos Response. MFSA is a national progressive social justice nonprofit that mobilizes clergy and laity within the United Methodist Church to take action on issues of peace, poverty, and people's rights within the church, the nation, and the world. We were founded in 1907 and wrote the church's first social creed in that same year. And today we continue to shine a light on injustice and organize justice-seeking people, much like yourselves, to make change. So we're really excited to be doing this webinar with UMKR. Just a few announcements concerning our call today. We are recording this webinar, and so the recording will be available afterwards. It'll be shared out by UMKR and by MFSA in the coming days. Also, to help with the internet, if you are not presenting and you'd like to stop your video, that will be helpful with the sound and the internet. If you have questions during our time together, we're going to be using the chat box to share questions. And then there's a time during our time today where we'll be addressing as many of those questions as we're able. So feel free to use that box to submit your questions, and you don't have to wait until we're at that section to submit questions. And we're going to try to offer closed captioning for this webinar. This is our first time doing it, so we're trying it out. In order to access that, you can click closed caption and click show subtitles to view. I'll be trying to kind of take down as much of the main points that are shared. It probably won't be word for word, and there'll probably be spelling errors and mistakes, but I apologize in advance for all of that. It's something new that we're trying. And now I would love to turn it over to my dear friend, John Wagner from UMKR.
There we go. Hi, everybody. I am John Wagner. I'm one of the co-chairs for United Methodist for Kairos Response, along with Lisa Bender. And Jin, I may not have been listening carefully to what Bridget said, but I guess we would advise you to put it on speaker view. That way you can see the person who's talking most clearly and not everyone's faces. United Methodist for Kairos Response, it's been around for about 10 years. We advocate for equal rights for Palestinians. As a Christian community, we connect mostly with the Kairos Palestine, which is the organization that put out the Kairos document, again, around 10 years ago. So we are closely tied to them. I would like to invite you all at this time to, if you'd like to know more about our organization, there are some emails and websites available on a PowerPoint, and you'll see them presently. I'd like to introduce our speakers right now. We have with us, Janet Lahr Lewis, who is a retired United Methodist missionary to Israel and Palestine. She has helped to coordinate hundreds of tours. She has also worked with Archbishop Elias Ghareeb, and then as coordinator for the International Friends of Sabeel. Her last years in the Middle East was as the Methodist liaison in Palestine and Israel in partnership with the General Board of Global Ministries of the United Methodist Church, also the British Methodist Church, and the World Methodist Council. She also continued her advocacy work in Washington, and she lives near Washington today. A proud mother and grandmother. Janet serves on our steering committee. I believe the next person who will be speaking is Elias, is that right? Elias will be second, okay. Elias is a Palestinian Christian who leads his family-owned tour company, Grace Tours, to become expert on the ins and outs of travel in this part of the world. He studied management and tourism at Bethlehem University, holds a BA in Biblical Studies from Bethlehem Bible College as well. He began working in the tourism sector as a tour guide and tour operator in the 90s. He's married to Lena, a father of 3, and originally from Beit Sahur in Palestine, where he and his family still live. We'll also have with us Joan Deming, a retired United Methodist pastor from Wisconsin, who was for many years the executive director of Pilgrims of Ibilene, an organization supporting the work of Elias Ghareeb, and who is an internationally renowned Melkite archbishop, educator, and peacemaker. We referred to him when we introduced Janet. She and her husband, Don Schultz, have 2 daughters and a grandchild. She has led many pilgrims to Palestine and Israel and believes strongly in travel as a means to bridge building and international friendship. Thank you so much for listening to this introduction. I'm now going to turn it over to Janet Lahr Lewis, who will begin our presentations.
Thank you, John. Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, in Elias's case. I'd like to concentrate on our resolution on Holy Land tours to begin with, because that explains why we do the types of tours that we do for the United Methodist Church. We have, if you want to go to the next slide, I'm only highlighting certain portions. There's a whole lot of whereases before the therefores in the resolution, and I'm only highlighting certain key points that I think are important for everyone and that I hope you will share with your clergy and especially with your bishops. As you can see, it says the United Methodist Church asks bishops, clergy, members, agencies, and congregations, that's pretty much everyone in the church, as they plan their Holy Land trips, to devote significant program time to contact with the indigenous Christian leaders. The issue of Israel and Palestine, hundreds of thousands of pilgrims go over every year, many of whom are United Methodists. They never encounter a single Christian on their trips. They spend the majority of their time visiting the ancient sites, walking where Jesus walked, or in most cases running where Jesus walked, and they don't even have the opportunity to meet with the local Christian community or many of the local people, whether they're Christians, Muslims, or Jews. So we want to try to rectify that by pushing our clergy in particular, and especially our bishops, when they plan their tours to the Middle East, to include those components in their trips. Next slide, thank you. This is just an illustration of some of the clergy. These are ecumenical gatherings. You can see there are several different denominations, 13 indigenous Christian churches, which have been around for centuries and centuries since the day of Pentecost. Next. Again, addressing the bishops, pastors, and laity, that they don't schedule enough time to spend with the indigenous Christian population. We can go to the next slide. The importance of the Christian community, even though they're roughly about 1% of the population, they've drastically reduced, particularly since 1967 with the occupation of the West Bank and Gaza. But the Christian influence is still huge on the local society through their education systems, their healthcare systems, their community development programs, their social services. And this is one of the things that we try to make sure that we support as a denomination in our 4 areas of focus in the region, which are women and children, healthcare, education, and peace with justice, which we like to do not only inside the Palestinian and Israeli community, but also on the global level. That's where we need to make change. Next. This is what most tourists see. They don't ever go down into those streets and meet the people. Next. We have many advanced projects in the region, and you can find those on the Global Ministries website, which will come up at the end of the hour. We also have partner organizations, what we call our partner projects, and this is where we work with Muslim and Jewish communities in supporting the work that they do as well. It's very easy to include meetings with them in your itineraries if you know to ask. Next. Supporting the local markets, you know, shop local is becoming a sort of a catchword in this country. This is what we're trying to promote. Instead of having the tour agencies take you to the big super shops that they have contracts with, the tourist shops, where people will literally spend hours just shopping, and that money goes to a family or that one business, rather than promoting shopping in our partner organizations where it would support the local women's groups or the local farmers or whatever. So this is also one of the key things that's in our resolution on how to do responsible tourism. Next. Volunteer and mission teams is another way that people can take a trip that's considered a responsible tour. Certainly, we typically, when we organize a volunteer and mission team, you spend a third of the time visiting the holy sites, a third of the time visiting with some of our partner organizations, and a third of the time doing your service project. And you can see from these pictures, actually Tina Whitehead is in that picture. You can see the difference that a volunteer and mission team can make in just 5 days worth of working to support our local projects in the region. So these are very important. If you want to sign up for that, you can contact your jurisdictional VIM coordinator, and she can certainly help you to either organize a trip or find one that's already been organized for you. Next. This is key. Annual conferences and general agencies are supposed to be monitoring the implementation of this resolution. If you don't know we even have a resolution, or if they don't know we have this resolution, then they're not going to know to monitor and report. So one of the places where you can actually get the copy of the book of resolutions, the West Ohio Conference has a free download. You can download the whole book for free, and I put the link in there, but I just found that by Googling UMC Book of Resolutions free, and it comes up. So that's an easy way to find that information, and all the resolutions are in there. So there's no excuse for people to say, oh, we didn't know. You need to remind them and hold them accountable when it comes time to making sure that they're reporting on these types of trips. And because I must say, many of the bishops are not following our own guidelines, sadly. Next. Okay, it cut off the bottom, and so I'll just read it to you. One of the things that, as a missionary in particular, I was constantly being asked, was people asking me, aren't you supposed to be teaching people about Jesus as a missionary? And, you know, I'm not sure they didn't realize where I was working, or they didn't realize that there were Christians still in the region. So I put a quote in here from a Muslim friend of ours who's the head of one of our advanced projects. And he said, I don't need you to teach me who Jesus was. He was Palestinian. He was one of us. You teach me what it means to be a Christian by how you live your life. And I think that's the difference that we can all make as pilgrims to the region, in showing our support for the local community and showing our concern for to find out more about the conflict and how we can help in the advocacy work. Next. Oh, I guess I'm turning it over to Joan.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much, Janet. Joan Deming will now share with us. And Joan, can you unmute yourself or somebody unmute her? There you go.
Good.
Thank you.
All right. Yes, thank you for the opportunity to do some sharing. I believe that I'm part of this because I've led about 15 or 16 group trips as a leader. Most of my trips were through Pilgrims of Abilene, but I've had members of annual conferences with me, people touring from all over the United States, joining together. One of the things that happens in a group trip like that is that frequently not everybody knows each other. And so the group experience needs to be facilitated by a skilled group leader who can help the group become acquainted with each other, who can encourage them to be open to the people that we're learning from and listening to, as Janet laid out some of the options, and also can facilitate the discussion between group members of how they're responding to what they're learning and seeing. My experience with leading these groups is that people in the group get almost as much from each other as they do from the people that we visit in the organizations and the places that we stop and meet local people in Palestine and on the other side of the Green Line in Israel. And so the very first thing I would say is just put some thought into how the leadership is going to be done for your group, and give time for worship and for discussion so that your group experience can be a strong one. Next slide, please. My slides are I think backing up what Janet has said, but I want to just give some specifics from my own experiences and recognize that these are representative of many options. It's really important, in my view, to have Palestinian Christian guides for as much of the tour as possible, not only because they lead lead you through the places you visit with an eye toward strengthening your understanding of the local Christian experience, but they also tell you their personal story. And you come away with relationships that last for a long time as they do this sharing. Next slide. It's also really helpful to meet with a variety of peacemaking groups. And the one that's pictured here is two representatives of the Parent Circle Bereaved Families Forum. This is Rami El-Hanan on the right, and George Saadeh on the left. George is a Christian, Rami is a Jew. Both of them had daughters killed in the violence of the situation in Israel and Palestine. And they work together through this organization, the Parent Circle, to tell the story of why they believe that the violence has to stop and human rights have to be honored. And we have to learn to listen and understand each other. So they're a good representative, but only one of many possibilities for groups you can meet with. Next slide, please. I believe it's also really important to visit holy sites for the other Abrahamic religions, the Jewish and Muslim religions, as well as Christian holy sites. And I put this slide in because I wanted to just underscore that it is possible for groups to line up guided tours of the Al-Aqsa Mosque or to go to the Ibrahimi Mosque in Hebron. These are probably the two most common places to visit in the Muslim faith, but this was inside Al-Aqsa. And whoever you have preparing your tour for you, if you ask for a tour like this, they'll be able to work with local people to make those arrangements. Next slide, please. It's also really helpful, significant for us as United Methodists to visit United Methodist related programs. This slide shows Daoud Nasser, who's he's a member of a family who were awarded the World Methodist Peace Award a few years ago for their work on their family farm. Again, one illustration of many United Methodist related projects. Next slide. I'd also say have some local experiences. This group was there during the olive harvest season, so we spent an afternoon helping with the olive harvest at one location. Next slide. And finally, tour leaders maybe are interested in keeping costs as low as possible, but often that means eating in places that provide just tourist food. And I would suggest making it a priority in your planning to have some special traditional Palestinian meals arranged for you. It may not be the cheapest option, but they definitely will be great, very tasty, an experience of Palestinian hospitality and a wonderful, memorable experience for your group. Next slide. Finally, I think it's important to meet with Christians, as Janet said, but on both sides of the green line. All of my other slides came from the West Bank. This one comes from Israel. This is Father Elias Ghareeb, Archbishop and President, founder of the Mar Elias Educational Institutions in Ibilin, Israel. So meeting with Christians in the Galilee is equally important to meeting with Christians in Bethlehem or other sites we go to in order to hear their varying stories of being local Christians as a minority, but a really significant minority. So I wish you well in your travels and hope that some of these suggestions are helpful. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Joan. Elias, are you prepared to share with us now? You need to unmute, I think.
Just a minute. Yeah, here I am. Hello, good evening, everyone, or actually good morning or good afternoon. First, I want to thank all of you for your interest, and I want to thank the organizers of this important talk. I believe Janet and Joan had already shared a lot of good and important information, but let me talk a little bit here about like choosing an agent or, you know, like how to be selective about the agent. I believe these tours are very special and need more like specific travel agents who have experience in this field. You know, somebody who would understand when you talk to him like a Methodist advanced project or a UMC partner or like the VI, want to do a VIM trip, somebody to understand your interests and goals. And so it's very important to look for someone who has like a reputation in working in such special trips. Not all agents would understand, and they might try to sell you another kind of tour that they promote, or they might tell you, oh, these areas are not really safe. You know, just make sure like I'm sure you know what you wanted to see and the importance of like fact-finding or volunteerism mission trip or social justice trip. So it's important that you focus on your goal and look for the best partner. You know, you need somebody who's well connected in the community. Like when you mentioned to him, like, you know, the Mar Elias College or the Bible College or WIAM Center or the Tent of Nations, somebody who knows the community, who also the community knows him, and he's well connected and he's ready to like to arrange these special visits and tours for you. you know, somebody who will also support the community, you know, by, as Janet said, not just take you to certain areas where he is making some money, but to take you to local organization, women organization, where you really, when you buy something there, your money is benefiting a lot of people, a lot of community members. Also, it's very important to stick to the UMC resolution, and so people need to stay in Bethlehem and in West Bank cities whenever it's possible. And you know, there is always an opportunity to arrange even a homestay with Palestinian Christians in Bethlehem and even in other small towns where you have Christian community. So it's very important to focus that you need to use at least part of the trip to be using Palestinian hotels and Palestinian services. Guides, I know some of you might have some good or bad experience with guides, but I believe it's very important to have a guide. And if you can ask, or you can ask to have a Christian guide, that will really make a big difference for your trip. Now, something about prices. I'm sure there are many prices in the market, but it's very important to have like a clear, like when you get the offer, to have like a clear price details, what's included, what's not included. And sometimes like you might get like promotions say all inclusive, but when you look into the fine print, there is like the gap, you know, there you can find like the unexpected cost. From my experience working with like study tours and or like volunteers in mission, and I have worked with many Methodists and other churches, in my opinion, is very important to make the trip all inclusive, like for all the honorariums for speakers. You know, you're meeting people, you're visiting organization, all of them nowadays expect an honorarium, could be like $150 to $200. So you don't need to create an inconvenience and ask people to collect money. Oh, we have here an honorarium, please give me everyone $15 or $10 or whatever. This creates like really inconvenience for the group members. Also, what I like when we had volunteers in mission trips, you know, we always even include like money for the project. Like if you're doing painting, doing like garden work, whatever, it's important to, like, you know, I would say I'll send in the price that the price includes like $100 per person for the volunteering project. Even I would suggest collecting tips and even include lunches. You know, this will create like a very good atmosphere for your group. You know, they know the budget. You know, even if they have limited amount of money to spend here, they know they want to spend it maybe on like getting some gifts, supporting, you know, things or organization people they wanna like they are visiting, but not to have unexpected costs, you know, or unexpected expenses. To every day ask them for, you know, like we need to collect money for lunch. And you know, sometimes lunches here are not cheap. You know, we might even pay for like a sandwich $10, or maybe some meals might be like $17. And for some people, it's really unexpected price. So again, you know, like choosing the agent is very important. There are a lot of websites where you can find names of many agents who deal with like study tours, volunteers in mission, or you can ask somebody who led tours, you know, like you have a word from like John or Janet, or like somebody in your church who will like direct you to the right agent who will understand your request, your goal, and lead you to the right kind of tour. Something else which is really, many people ask about it, but I see many familiar faces and friends on this webinar, and is like, they question about safety. But safety is very important for every tourist, for every person. But even before the COVID, where is it safe in the world? I mean, I don't want to mention cities in the US or in Europe, but every place in the world there is like dangerous areas or areas that's really not safe. But generally speaking, if you are talking about the Holy Land, I mean, we don't have like attacks or anything against tourists, because the Israeli-Palestinian issue is an internal issue. Tourists are not a target and have never been a target for any attack or violence. People here in our region understand that these are tourists are, and especially if you're talking about like the West Bank, are like a major income for the community. So I mean, they are a blessing. We want to take care of them, and actually you find, for those who have been touring around, let's say in Israel and Palestine, they will find a way much better hospitality on this side of the country. Now, as I mentioned, the tourists have never been a target. Also being with a local as a group, when you're traveling with a group, with a guide who's connected to the agent, and now, we have a lot of networks where, if there is something going around in this street in Jerusalem or in this street in Bethlehem, people just simply avoid it. I mean, when you look at media, let's say there's a demonstration going in Bethlehem, the camera just show that one same street every time. I mean, if you just go like less than like 1/4 of a mile, the life is continue as usual and more. And again, bus driver, tour guides, and tour companies are always in touch with each other, and they know where to go and not to go. So it's very important to have a local guide with you who understand the language, who knows where to go and not to go. But like if you're talking, even if you take numbers nowadays, in the past few years, every year, over 3 million tourists visit the Holy Land. And the Holy Land is like really tiny country and so it's a really big number for a small country, which means people are feeling safe. And we can talk forever about safety, but you need to know that always, like for us and as an agent or a local or a tour guide, your safety is our priority. The only region people would say is really dangerous, I mean, between brackets, it would be like Gaza. And Gaza is not accessible anyway, not for us, not for you, not for anyone. I mean, no one is allowed in there. But generally, I would say the West Bank, like Israel, East Jerusalem, even go to Nablus, to Ramallah, to Taibeh, to Zabade. I mean, these are names of towns and areas in the West Bank. It is, I would say, generally very, very, very safe.
Elias?
Yeah.
We'll have some time for people to ask specific questions of you. I guess I would ask you to wrap up here.
Okay. So again, thank you. Thank you for this opportunity. It's good to see a lot of friends and new friends. And I encourage you to look for good agents. I'll be personally happy to help you, but I tell you there are many other good agents in Bethlehem and East Jerusalem that you can trust for such tour. But I tell you, number is not really huge. You need to look for more specific, but there are still many good agents. And really, one word, it's very important for you whenever you come here is to meet us. Just meet the people, and then the change will happen. Just meet the people, meet, as we say, meet Christ in every person that you meet, like you meet here, and life will change for you. And eventually will change the whole world.
Thanks
Thank
so
you,
much.
John and others, and I'll be available for questions.
Sure.
Thank you.
Just one question I have is, where are you calling from? Where are you now?
I'm calling. I am at home. In I'm in Beit Sahur, just a little bit. I mean, down the hill from Bethlehem.
Okay. Thank
in
you.
the shepherd's town. Yeah. Thank you.
Janet's going to comment for about 2 minutes, I suppose, on the previous speakers, and then we'll have time for some questions and answers. Thank you.
One of the things that I consider to be really critical is what to do when you get back from your trip. This tends to be a life-changing experience, and you want to share with your friends, your family, etc., and you start to talk about what you've seen, and it's sometimes very emotional, and you see their eyes glaze over. They don't want to hear. So it's important to stay connected to the people that you go on the trip with, and especially to try to find organizations to help you do the advocacy work. The advocacy is probably the most important part of your trip if you want to be responsible in what you've seen and done. So doing the follow-up is really important. You'll notice the third one down, the first thing everybody can do is pray. Everybody can do that. There's no excuses. Find out where you can learn more about the political situation. You'll hear from different speakers, and you may want to follow up on them. Certainly, they all have websites. Typically, you can learn more about their work and how to support it. In the Kairos Palestine document, one of the things that they mention is come and see. Come and see for yourself. Try to get your pastors and your bishops to, I talked about this before, to participate in responsible tourism. Once you get back, I'm not going to read all of these one by one, you can read them, but certainly passing resolutions calling for divestment in companies that are supporting occupation and the depriving an entire community of even their most basic human rights. We need to be seriously worrying about that and do something about it. We also have, I'm not sure where this is going to come up, if they want to put the slide up with the contacts and the list of organizations on there. Yay, thank you. I noticed that either Dan or Courtney Randall, or maybe both of them, are actually on this call. And you'll see they are the new Methodist liaisons. They're scheduled to go over in August, if that happens, who knows. But they're already certainly working on the issue. So feel free to be in touch with them. The UMKR is listed on there, and other organizations where you can plug in to find out more. Certainly the UMKR website lists tours that are coming up that you might want to plug into or suggest to people who are interested in going on a trip. If you've already, been there, done that, I can't travel anymore, whatever. I will also highlight down at the bottom is Tina White has contact information. Many, in fact, about 67% of educational opportunities trips are through the Methodist Church. It's a big part of their business. And many of these trips are what we have for many years called the Israeli cookie cutter tours, where you just, go to all the holy sites and you have a wonderful time and you show all the beautiful pictures when you get home. If you're the tour host, the person who is organizing the trip with educational opportunities, it's his responsibility to request that they stop at certain locations if some of our partners, and typically EO will comply. They may give you a hard time. It depends on who you happen to talk to. So if you do have any difficulties, just email Tina and she can help you manipulate that whole system. If you're already scheduled to go on a trip with educational opportunities, please contact the person who's organizing the trip for you or the tour leader. Typically it's a clergy person, and tell them about the resolution and make sure that they can request some of these stops for you.
Thank you.
Got it.
Okay. Friends, we do have some questions. I want to say one thing before we start with that. We did get a number of suggestions for tours, specific tours. We made a commitment when we began thinking about this seminar not to promote any specific tour or tour company. But please look at your chat. People have made some strong suggestions about where you can go and so forth. But there are some provocative questions. One of them was about any, oh shoot, what was it? Okay, sorry. Oh yeah, do groups ever get to visit settlements? And is that possible to arrange to meet those people living in settlements? And I guess I'll start with Janet first on that.
Thank you. It's possible, yes. However, by giving, they charge a fee. And by giving money to an illegal settlement, that's an illegality, and the church does not participate in that. You can have Israelis speak to you about the settlements and the settlement movement without actually having to go to a settlement.
Okay. This one I'm going to direct to Elias. It's again a provocative question. Are we buying into kind of the Israeli narrative about Gaza being a very dangerous place by not going there? You talked about going to Gaza. Is that something that tourists or pilgrims ought to try to do, in your opinion?
You know, like Gaza's always, if there is like any instability or, Gaza's name is always mentioned, and people always worried about going to Gaza. This is like the atmosphere. But first, I believe personally, I don't believe Gaza is a dangerous place. But I wanted to bring a point that anyway, you don't have access to Gaza. You as an American, me as a Palestinian, we cannot go to Gaza. It needs like a big coordination, and it's almost, I would say, impossible. Unless you go with a humanitarian group or you go with an international group, like international body, like a government, or something. So I'm sorry if I was misunderstood to promote Gaza as a dangerous place. This was not my point at all. Just because people who does not know the area just think it's always like dangerous. So I'm just telling you, anyway, there is no, first, it's not dangerous, and anyway, you don't have chance to get
Right.
there. This was my point. Yeah.
Thank you. I'm going to direct the next question to Joan. There was a question about clergy sabbaticals or clergy-only trips. Have you ever had any involvement with that, or any suggestions for that?
I have not taken any clergy-only trips myself. And the sabbatical question, I only know from what other people have told me. The place that's most often mentioned about a place to use as home base is Tantur, the Ecumenical Study Center just outside of Bethlehem. And I believe that's where the Methodist Liaison Office is located also. I know that the Mar Elias schools have occasionally had people come to stay in the guest house as a long-term study option, but at the present time, the guest house is closed until further notice. So I wouldn't put plans there. I think in the chat I saw another suggestion of a place in the Bethlehem, Beit Jala, Beit Sahur area. Sorry, I don't have more information.
Janet or Elias, briefly, anything to suggest?
I've worked on clergy trips before, ecumenical women bishops trips, etc., where they can do sabbaticals, as Joan mentioned. A good central location with a lot of excellent, and with an excellent theological library is Tantur Ecumenical Institute, just outside the checkpoint of Bethlehem. Plus it has accommodations there. So you don't, everything's kind of all included. Short term, anywhere, a lot of these organizations, particularly if they have housing, will certainly welcome you if you want to, use it as your home basis. Yeah, not a problem.
Just
for clergy trips, John, I believe that many of our advanced partners also can work with clergy who want to come and volunteer or spend a little bit of time immersing into those places. Might be of more interest to clergy than most church members.
Friends, what I'm finding on our chat box, if you can get to that, there are lots of suggestions in addition to what Janet, Joan, and Elias are sharing. So please take a look at that, and you may find something that answers your question about that. We're, again, not trying to promote any particular group or tour, but there's some information about especially a woman-to-woman tour, one that's more of an ecumenical tour, and several others. Please take a look at that. Here's a practical question. I think it's a brief one. What is the current rate for speaker honorariums? Elias, maybe you can share that.
Nowadays, first, unfortunately, we don't have tours anymore. I mean, in the past 4 months, but usually speakers would charge starting from $150 up till, the average is like 150 to 200. Some special speaker would ask for like 300. They are not very special, but they think of themselves sometimes special.
Okay. Okay. Let's see. Another question. I think, excuse me, sorry. Any advice for groups? This is a practical question. Getting in and out of the Israeli airport, Ben Gurion, just difficulties or tips for doing that. Any of you, I guess I'll start with Janet, anything that you would say?
Yes, it's become a lot easier than it used to be. You generally want to give the least amount of information as possible. Answer their question honestly, but you don't need to give them all the information. In other words, don't lie, but don't volunteer what they don't really need to know, because it's not a security issue. So if they ask you, and they haven't been doing this for quite a while, are you going to the West Bank? You can say, we don't have our itinerary yet, I'm not sure. And you won't get your itinerary typically until you see your guide in the bus. So that would be an honest answer. Even though in your mind, you may already know that, yes, we are scheduled to go to the West Bank, but without an itinerary to confirm that, you really don't know. So you're answering, but you're not answering. Yeah, you don't need to lie. And certainly on the way out is typically harder than getting in to the country. And again, just don't volunteer information. And when you go as a group, it's much easier than going as an individual anyway.
Thank you. Joan and Elias, if you'd be willing to add to that also the question, if you're an activist, can you be refused entry? We'll start with you, Joan, and then Elias, I'm sure you have a lot to contribute there.
I think you can be refused entry if you are labeled an activist, and it's probably best not to post really radical writings about political issues related to Israel and Palestine on social media pages, at least in the months before making a trip. And in answer to the question you first related, John, I just tell my groups to emphasize that we're there on a spiritual pilgrimage. And that that is absolutely true. We don't have to volunteer that we're there to learn about the political situation. That's probably not how most of us would phrase it anyway. We're there to learn the stories of local people. But I think emphasizing a spiritual pilgrimage as an experience going in and coming up and going out is a good way to go.
Thank you. Elias.
Yeah, I believe both John and Janet give an excellent answer. Again, if you are coming with a group, it's always way easier, like entering the country, and had been easier in the past few years. Like the tour leader will say, or the pastor, we are a Christian group coming to visit the Holy Land. If you are asked, you're staying in Bethlehem, or if you're going to West Bank, Israelis, I believe most of the cases stopped asking this question coming in, because we have a lot of hotels in Bethlehem, and they know, and many Israeli agents are booking for their groups in Bethlehem due to high demand on tourism. So they know that you're coming into the West Bank. As an activist, if you are really well-known activist and active on social media, you might have hard time coming in, and you might be even denied entry too. So, I mean, if you are a well-known activist and if you are very frank with them, at the airport, there is a good possibility that you will be turned back. Yeah.
Yeah,
so again, just try to be less active on Facebook, or just like stop your Facebook while you are traveling. Yeah.
I went in last November, and I have to admit I was kind of disappointed that they had no suspicions of me whatsoever. Elias, one last question. With the current lockdown and no travel, I imagine a number of people here are curious, how is Palestine doing that relies so much on tourism? Just how desperate is the situation in your view?
Now it has been 4 months that we had the first lockdown, and now since 6 days we have been staying in at home. But even when the town is open, if you talk about Bethlehem, there is not one single tourist, unless he's living here. Yeah. Hotels, restaurants, shops, workshops are all closed. Unfortunately, even the governmental support to the unemployed people almost does not exist. They gave like very few number, like a couple of $100 in the past 4 months. I mean, what you can do about it? Most hotels and restaurants related to tourism, they already dismiss their employees. And situation is not easy at all. I know it's like maybe this in most parts of the world, but really Bethlehem and the region is struggling a lot economically, and we hope things will finish. I mean, there will be like a vaccine or medicine soon, because people are getting tired. Today I went for in town just to buy. They allow you to go out to buy food or medicine or something, and you can see it's like a ghost town. I mean, it's like dead here nowadays, unfortunately.
Thank you.
So, we need your prayers and support. I'm sure many of you who's on this call are well connected to people, organizations. It will be a blessing if you pray for them, help them if you can. So things are not easy at all. And I tell you frankly, I mean, about tourism, we have in Bethlehem area over 60% of the population involved in tourism in a way or another, or their income is through tourism. And following up groups, and some of you were supposed to lead groups in October and November. People are postponing their trips sometime after like March or April and even October next year. So that means in the best case scenario, tourism will be back in March or April. So like people will be without work for a year, which I mean, really hard.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Friends, to wrap up, we're close to the hour here. We have a really good chat section, and a number of you have contributed some very good ideas and comments. Please take a look at that. We're going to keep the this webinar open even after we officially close, so you have time to look at it carefully, and I would encourage you to do that. Please, if you have questions, you're certainly able to contact UMKR, United Methodist for Cairo's Response, and our web address is there. We'd be glad to give you any advice. Of course, we'll try to be neutral. We're not trying to promote any one tour group, but please let us know if you have any questions about this or any other area. We have another webinar coming up, and it will be in August 12th, 2020, 1 p.m. Our speakers are Dr. Stephen Sizer, who is a well-known British theologian and author on Christian Zionism. Munter Isaac is the pastor in Palestine of Christmas Evangelical Lutheran Church. Is a wonderful educator and speaker, internationally known. I would encourage you to consider that. Christian Zionism, of course, drives U.S. policy far more than it ought to, and most of you, I think, are aware of that. And they will have a way to address this as Christians and as evangelical Christians. So I think that's going to be important. I hope that you're a part of that. Hold on, just getting a couple of suggestions here. Please hold on. Okay. Sorry. I'm getting these on my laptop. Okay, I see. What is the question? Okay. Most people, this was a comment that seemed important. Most people should not worry about getting in. I think that was stated in one way or another that it's still fairly easy. And I made the comment that I got in just on my own. I wasn't part of a tour. The questioning was minimal. I said I was a Christian here to see the Holy Land. That's about all it took. I am a pastor. I don't know if we get any kind of special, some discretion there, but who knows. Friends, I think I am done. I'm going to ask Bridget if there's something that I've forgotten, if she's with us, anything that we need to include here?
No, I think we're good to go.
Okay, we are intending to leave this on. We will take you off of mute, and you can share with each other. Honestly, I don't know how that'll go.